Okay, we're going to go ahead and start section 1.2, or for some of you it would be lesson 8, variables on both sides. Alright, so now we're going to end up with variables, letters on both sides of the equation, and there's a few rules we need to follow when we're doing that. Okay, so let's look at some of these. Alright, so steps. Step 1, use the distributive property to remove any grouping symbols. Okay, so we'll be doing that in some examples where you have to distribute before we can move on to step 2, which is to simplify each side of the equation. To keep it simple, that means to do combine like terms. That's what we're doing. We're going to combine like terms on both sides of the equation. We want to simplify it and then go from there. From here, then we're going to go ahead and use the properties of equality. Those are the ones we brought up earlier in the lessons, where if you add on one side, you add on the other, subtract on one side, subtract on the other. Same thing with multiplication and division. Whatever you do in one term, you must do it on the other side of the equation. So we'll follow that. Step 4, use properties of inequalities to solve the variable. Okay, we'll talk about what's the easiest way on which side you decide for solving for x, and then finally check your solution to the original equation. Alright, we're going to go ahead and look at our first two examples. The first one is 2x minus 4 equals 12x minus 14. Okay, so the way we're going to start this is we're going to go ahead and choose the smaller terms. So let's look at the two terms we have here. We have 2x and 12x. Okay, there's no distribution, so we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to simplify any sides of the equation. They're already simplified. So if you look at this side, 2x minus 4 is simplified, and on the other side of the equation, 12x minus 4 is simplified. So now we have to worry about is, well, which side do we choose? Do we choose the 2x and move it to this side of the equation, or do we take the 12x and move it to this side of the equation? This is something students don't know what to do, so I'm just going to show you something very simple. How do I choose which one to move? Do I move this one this way or this one this way? So what I'm going to ask you to do is just use or choose the smaller term. Okay, choose the smaller term. So between 2x and 12x, which one's the smaller term? Well, that would be the 2x. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and subtract 2x on both sides. So the 2x is going to cancel, and I'm going to be left with negative 4 equals 12x minus 2x is 10x minus 14. So if you choose the smaller term, you avoid a lot of negative x's, and so a lot of students have trouble with the negative x at the end or a negative variable, and they don't know what to do. So choose the smaller term. Between 2x and 12x, 2x was the smaller term, therefore I subtract the smaller term. Alright, so now from here we're going to go ahead and to solve for x we need to move the 14 over, so we're going to go ahead and add 14 on both sides. Okay, so 14x is going to cancel. The 14 and the positive 14, negative 14 are going to cancel. Negative 4 plus 14, well, that's going to give us a value of 10, and that's going to equal to 10x. Our final step is to, well, you have 10 times x, therefore if it's multiplying, the opposite would be to divide. So we're going to divide both sides by 10, and that's going to cancel the 10s out, leave us with an x, and then 10 over 10 is going to give us a value of 1. So therefore our value is going to be x is going to equal to 1. Again, anytime you solve for something, you want to go back, plug it back into the equation, check that they're equal, make sure the equations do equal each other to confirm that you have the right answer. Okay, let's look at example 2. You've got 2 times x minus 4 equals negative 2x minus 10. So here we do have distribution, so that would be one of our first steps when solving equations on both sides. So we want to distribute, so we want to multiply 2 times x and 2 times negative 4. So on this side of the equation I got 2 times x, which is going to be 2x, 2 times negative 4, that's going to give us a negative 8, and that is going to equal to the negative 2 x minus 10. Okay, so now we've got what we saw over here, like example number 1, and what we want to do is then, which one do we choose? Do we choose the 2x or the negative 2x? Well, go back to the rule up here. I tell you to choose the small term. This would avoid, if you choose this every time, you're gonna end up with a positive x instead of dealing with negative x's. So which of the two is smaller? Well, the smaller one is going to be the negative 2x. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2x. I'm sorry, add 2x, because this is the smallest one. So I'm going to go ahead and add 2x. This was the smaller, so I'm going to go ahead and add 2x on both sides. Cancel out the smaller value, and I have 2x plus 2x. Well, 2x plus 2x is going to give us 4x minus 8. And then that's going to equal to negative 10. And of course these cancel. Now we have 4x minus 8 minus a negative 10, and we want to move the 8 over to the other side. Well, instead of using as negative 8, we're going to go ahead and add 8 on both sides. So we're going to go ahead and add 8. These are going to cancel. And now we have 4x equal to negative 10 plus 8 is going to give us 8, negative 2. Now we want to solve for x by dividing both sides by 4. So we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by 4. 4's will cancel. And now I have x equal to negative 2 over 4. Well, negative 2 over 4 is really equal to negative 1/2, and yes, sometimes we will get fractions, so be aware of that. And you can always go back and check it and plug it in and see that that the equation is equal to each other. Okay, before we move on to examples 3 and 4, I want to talk about these two examples. If you noticed, when we do math, and the way we've taught you math on solving equations, there's a lot of writing involved here. We got to subtract 2x vertically down, cancel things out. Then we get to this place down here on this second, negative 4 equals 10x minus 14 on the first example. Then these cancel out, the negative 14 plus 14, negative 4 plus 14. And so if you notice, this whole equation for number 1 is very long. I'm going to show you a faster way of doing this, and it's more mental math. So I'm going to go ahead and right underneath number 1, I'm going to go ahead and copy the equation, and I have 2x minus 4 equals to 12x minus 14. Okay, so we're going to follow the same rules, which is we're still following the same rules, except for one thing. We're going to choose the smaller term like we did before, and the small term between the 2x and the 12x right here on the bottom is going to be the 2x. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 2x and I'm going to jump it over the equal sign. Okay, when you jump a value over the equal sign, okay, so I'm going to take my 2x and move it over to the other side. When I move this positive 2x over the equal sign, it'll change signs. So instead of being a positive 2x, if I jump over the equal sign, every time I jump over the equal sign, this positive 2x is now going to become a negative 2x. So that means that what I have here is I'm going to move this over to the other side, and I have 12x minus 2x because it turned negative. So 12 minus 2 becomes 10. So I will write it as 10x. Now, the reason I'm not writing anything other than this is because you want to do mental math. So you know this is a negative. So 12x minus 2x is 10x. So 12 minus 2 is 10. So I have 10x, bring down the negative 14, or the minus 14, and then bring down the minus 4. So now I have this right here. Now I want to move the 14 over to the other side. So I'm going to take the 14, and I'm going to jump it over to the other side of the equal sign. Mentally, mental math says that we're going to go ahead and change this negative 14, jump it over, it's going to become a positive 14. So it becomes 14 minus 4. So if you jump this over, the negative 14 is now positive 14. So 14 minus 4 is going to give us 10. So we'll get a 10 here. So that now we have 10 equal to 10x. Now the last thing to do is to divide by 10. And that means that x is going to equal to the value of 1. Now notice how easy, not so much how easier it is. The mental math is not difficult. You're just keeping an eye on the 12x, jumping the 2x over and subtracting. So 12 minus 2 was 10. Jump the 14 over from a negative to a positive, so it becomes 14 positive minus 4. 14 minus 4 is 10. Divide both sides by 10, x equals 1. So notice how it's a lot less information, and so it makes it easier to read. It's also you avoid a lot of errors when we are doing a lot of these vertical adding and subtracting 2x on both sides, and what happens is we mess up on one side and then the whole equation is wrong. Here we're just using mental math and remembering what to do on each of these steps, and what happens is that you really avoid a lot of errors. Let me show you another example. Let's look at number 2 real quick. So here I'll write it on the side, and we still need to distribute. So we're going to distribute, and we end up with this line right here, which is the 2x minus 8 equals negative 2x minus 10. Okay, so again, we're going to choose the smaller term. The smaller term we're going to use is going to be between the 2x and the negative 2x. I'm going to use the negative 2x because that's the smaller term. This will keep my answers positive. So I'm going to go ahead and jump this over. What happens to the negative 2x? You're right, it'll become a positive 2x. So the negative 2x is now positive 2x. So now we have 2x plus 2x. So that means that 2x plus 2x is now 4x. Bring down the negative 8. Bring down the negative 10. All right, and then again, we're going to now move the 8 over, and we're going to jump it to the other side. The negative 8 jumps over, and what do we get? That's right, it becomes a positive 8. So that means that this now is a positive 8. So negative 10 plus 8 is now going to be negative 2. So I have negative 2 equal to 4x. Now we just have to divide both sides by 4. 4's cancel, and x equals negative 2 over 4, which is really going to be x equal to negative 1/2. So again, notice how it's a lot cleaner the way we're doing it this way. This is a lot of mental math. This is an option for you, and I just wanted to bring these up. On examples 3 and 4, I'll also show those options, where you want to use it, and how this helps you kind of avoid errors. When you're writing too much, you're more likely going to make an error. When you're writing less and you're doing it mentally, mental math, and you can add and subtract in your head, it makes it a lot easier, makes it cleaner, and then you're less likely to make errors. But whichever side you want to choose, whether you want to do it this way like I just showed you, or the traditional way, the way you've been taught, either way works. Okay, let's go on to examples 3 and 4. Alright, so here's examples 3 and 4. We have 80n minus 30n equals negative 10 times 2 minus 5n minus n minus 1, and that's in parentheses. Wow, that's a very big equation. But we're going to do this step by step. So step 1, if you go back to the lesson from the beginning here, it said to do the distributive property and remove any grouping symbols. So we need to distribute. So we're going to take our value of negative 10 and multiply that times 2, and take the negative 10 and multiply that times negative 5. And then we're also going to multiply the invisible value here. What is the value of this invisible value of this number right here? That is correct. It is a 1. So this is a negative 1. Whenever you don't see anything there, it means it's a negative 1. So we're going to multiply negative 1 times n, and then we're going to multiply negative 1 times negative 1. So let's start right here. So first thing, I'm going to bring down 80n minus 30. Put an equal sign there, and put a nice straight line because it's going to be kind of a long equation. Negative 10 times 2 is negative 20. Negative 10 times negative 5n is going to give us positive 50. 50n. And we have a negative 1 times n. A negative 1 times n is going to give us a negative n. Negative 1 times a negative 1 is going to give us a positive 1. Okay, so now we're in this step. So now what we want to do is go on to step 2 when solving these variables on both sides. We want to simplify the expression on both sides of the equation. So if I look at the 80n minus 30n, we can simplify that. 80 minus 30n can be reduced, so we're going to go ahead and take 80n and 30n and combine it as one value. So we're going to go ahead and combine like terms. So this becomes 50n. And that's going to equal to, well, let's see what we can combine here. Well, we can combine the 50n minus the n, or 1n, if you want to put a 1 right here. So 50 minus 1 is going to give us 49n. And then we're going to go ahead and take the negative 20 and the plus 1. Negative 20 plus 1 is going to give us negative 19. Alright, so now we've simplified both sides of the expressions. We've combined terms. We combined these on the left side and the right side. Alright, so our next step here is to move the, let's see here. So we're going to go ahead and choose the smallest or the smaller of the variables, of the smaller of the variables. So we have 50n and 49n. Which one's smaller, 50 or 49? Be 49. So we're going to go ahead and subtract that one, and that's the one we're going to subtract. It's the smaller one, and we're going to subtract both sides by 49n. The 49 is going to cancel, and we end up with 50 minus 49. When you choose the smaller of the two variables between the 50 and the 49, which is 49, you're always going to end up with a positive. So 50 minus 49 is going to give us the value of 1n, and that's going to equal to the value of negative 19. And you can divide by 1 if you want to, but really the 1 is just an invisible value, so we can just go ahead and state that n equals to negative 19. And there's our answer. Okay. If I were to do this the other way, the one I just talked about earlier, trying to simplify things, there's really not that much you can simplify. There's a lot of distribution. There's a lot of combined like terms. The only step you're going to save yourself here is if I were to move the 49 over mentally and then subtract 50 minus 49, end up with a 1 n equal to negative 19. So we're just going to go ahead and skip that, but you can see the steps here on how this one worked. Now let's look at this example right here, number 4. You have 4 times n plus 0.5 equal to 5 times 2n minus 2. So there's a lot of distribution. First thing we want to do is distribute. So we want to distribute the 4 out. So 4 times n is going to give us 4n. 4 times 0.5, again, you can use a calculator for this, but this is going to equal to 2. And then we're going to go ahead and distribute the 5 times the 2n, and then 5 times the negative 2. 5 times the 2n is going to give us 10n. 5 times the negative 2 is going to give us negative 10. Okay, so what we want to do again is choose the smaller of the variables. The 4n versus the 10n, which is the smaller one I would choose. I'm going to go ahead and choose of course, the smallest term is going to be the 4n, so I'm going to go ahead and subtract 4n on both sides. 4n's are going to cancel. And you've got 2 equals 10 minus 4 is going to be 6n minus 10. We want to move the 10 over, so we want to add 10 on both sides. 10's cancel, and we are going to have 6n left over, and then 10 and 2 is going to be 12. So again, make sure you're keeping everything nice and straight. That's going to equal to that. That's going to equal to this here. So anyway, so 12 equals 6n, and last step is to divide both sides by 6. Hopefully you've done enough of this already, or you've seen enough of this that you can kind of follow along. So n is going to equal to 12 over 6, which is going to be 2. So there's our answer. Okay. Now, if I were to do this the faster way I showed you before, you still would have to do distribution. So really, what I wouldn't do anything until I got to this equation right here, which I'll show you right here, right underneath. So I would distribute everything out, and this, I would still end up with 4n plus 2 equal to 10n minus 10. I choose the smaller the variable, the smaller term. The smaller term is 4n. I'm going to jump it over. Mental math. If I jump it over, the positive 4n is now negative, so it's 10 minus 4. So this becomes 6n minus 10, because 10 minus 4 is 6. Bring down the 2. And then we're going to move the value of the 10. We're going to jump it over. From a negative, it's going to turn into a positive because I jumped the equal sign. So now I have 6n on this side, and 10 plus 2 is 12, and divide both sides by 6, and n is going to equal to 2. So either way, you end up with the same answer. Okay, we're going to go ahead and end this when weird stuff that can happen. Alright, so there's a few things we need to bring up that students get forget, don't understand when it comes to no solution. When every number is a solution of an equation, the equation is called an identity. Okay? If no number exists that is a solution of the equation, we say then that it has no solution. So we're going to go ahead and look at these two examples so you can realize what the differences are. So let's go quickly to the identity. So if we're going to go ahead and solve for this one, we're going to go ahead and start by distributing. So we're going to go ahead and distribute these out. Okay, so 2 times 2x is going to give us 4x. 2 times negative 4 is going to give us a negative 8. And we're going to go ahead and bring down to 16. We're going to distribute 4 times x is 4x. 4 times positive 2 is going to be 8. Alright, so we're going to simplify this. 4x. Negative 8 plus 16, and that's going to give us a positive 8. And then that's going to equal to 4x plus 8. And now we're going to go ahead and decide which of the between the 4x and the 4x, which one is the smaller of the terms. They're both the same, so it doesn't matter. So we're going to go ahead and subtract 4x on both sides. And so the 4x will cancel, and the 4x will cancel. So that means that I end up with 8 equal to 8. So whenever you're left with no terms and you have a number equal to another number, that means that this is called identity. Okay? So identity pretty much says that any value that I plug in into the x works. So any number, you could have put the 8 in here and both equations equal. You could have put 0 and both equations equal. You could have put down 1 and both equations equal. So that's pretty much what it means. When the numbers equal each other, it means that you can solve it, but it also means that any value, any number would work where the equations are equal. So that's called identity. Now let's look at an example of solution. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see here. We have negative 15y plus 7y plus 1 equals 3 minus 8y. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to combine these terms. Negative 15 plus 7y is going to give us a negative 8y. Bring down the 1. We have 3 equal to 8y. And so we want to choose the smaller of the two terms. Well, they're both negative 8y, so it doesn't matter. So we're going to go ahead and add 8y on both sides because it won't matter. Again, the y's are going to cancel on both sides. So we end up with 1 equal to 3. When the numbers are different, that means it's called a no solution. Okay? A no solution means that none of the numbers, not the 1 nor the 3 or any other number, would work to make these two equations the same. So no solution means any number that you plug in for y on this example or the variable does not make them equal. Identity means that whatever number you plug in would make them equal. On both cases, the x's cancel, or in this case the y's on this example over here where there's no solution cancel, and you can't solve it. You end up with numbers. So that's what it is. So go ahead and try these. Go ahead and try these on your own. You try the following. 10 times 1 plus 4m equals 4 times 3 plus 10m, and 4 times x minus 3 equals negative 2 times 6 minus 2x. Go ahead and try those two, and then I'll give you go ahead. And then, alright guys, here are the answers to the problems, so go ahead and look at them. You can see from the first one it's no solution, the second one is identical.